They were going to unpack a moment from the recent landlocked KISS cruise in Vegas, where the current lineup held a Q&A, and in that Q&A, both Eric Singer and Paul Stanley gave some rare, surprisingly insightful comments about Gene Simmons, specifically about his abilities as a bass player. And if you know anything about KISS, especially when it comes to Paul Stanley, getting a glimpse into a fellow member's musical abilities can sometimes be a pretty dicey proposition. During the Q&A, Eric Singer was asked what he thought of Gene Simmons as a bass player, and he said, Gene Simmons is a really creative bassist, and what's even more important is he's really easy to play with. He went on to say that Gene never speeds up or slows down, and he makes it really, really comfortable for the other musicians. Basically what he's saying is Gene gets the job done without causing any friction. Now here comes the surprising part. Paul Stanley decided to chime into the conversation and made the quote that I'm going to share with you right here.
All that Gene does as far as his personality and the things he says somehow gets in the way of people, certain people listening and going, he's a fantastic bass player.
And there it is. That's the whole problem in one sentence. Paul is incapable of giving out a compliment without coupling it with an insult. So every time he says something nice about somebody, he also says something not so nice. And in this case, what he's saying is that Gene Simmons' personality gets in the way of his musicianship. And this is where I throw it out to you. Do you think that this is true? Do you think that Paul Stanley is right about this? Do you think that Gene Simmons doesn't get his due as a bass player because of his shtick? Or do you think that Gene Simmons doesn't get his credit as a bass player just because he's not that good of a player? Now, as you know, I've done videos on this before on the channel, and there's been quite a varied response, but I would say most people are in the camp that Gene Simmons is a decent bass player, and he doesn't get credit for that because he's in the band KISS. And this is what I want to bring up right here. None of the members of KISS are really taken seriously as musicians, not by critics, not by rock historians, not even by most casual listeners. Even some of their fans would say, yeah, they're not great musicians, but I like the band. And that is the price of having some of the strongest theatrical personas in rock history. The makeup, the characters, the pyro, the boots, Gene Simmons sticking out his tongue, all that fire, smoking guitars. KISS built their careers on spectacle, and they embraced that spectacle. But the cost is that people assume that the music always takes a back seat. So nowhere is this more obvious than the way that people treat Gene Simmons. Today, he's primarily known as a businessman, a marketing machine, a licensing mastermind, builder of a merchandise empire, and a reality TV personality. But he is not known for bass playing. Well, look back to the 1970s. What was he known for? Sticking out his tongue, breathing fire, wearing demon makeup, spitting blood. Everything except playing the bass. Now here's the curveball, and this is the thing that I want to throw at you that you might not have thought of yourself, which is this is all of Gene's own doing. It is a calculated image. He doesn't want to be known as a great musician. He doesn't have to be known as a great musician. He doesn't care at all about being known as a great bass player because there's far more money and far more prestige in being a business demon trademark than in being an underrated rock bassist. So he always knew that he wasn't going to be Geddy Lee, he wasn't going to be a John Entwistle, he was going to be something else, a character, a larger-than-life persona. And being known as a great bass player, or a good one even, would just get in the way of what he's actually trying to do, which is to build a brand, to build a character, and to entertain fans in a way that most bass players who have his musical ability can't do. In a way, Gene's being underrated, if he is, as a bass player, works to his advantage. Now, my personal feeling, as I've said in other videos, is that he is an underrated player. And I think KISS's original rhythm section with Peter Criss and Gene Simmons is tragically underrated. But what's more important is what you think, so let me know.
MusicGuru here, asking you to help us on our march to 10,000 subscribers.